Hello, I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. This series of podcasts is aimed at financial planning professionals and also those who are looking to enter the financial planning profession. We will be talking during the podcast about all things Certified Financial Planner certification related, talking to other CFPs around the world, and also we will be dropping in on some new entrants who've just entered the financial planning profession, and we'll be checking up along the way on a regular basis with them to see how they're getting on. I hope you enjoy today's podcast. Hello and welcome. I'm Jackie Lucky, your financial planning maestro. And today we are talking about the Certified Financial Planner assessment and becoming a CFP professional. And I'm joined by a very special guest and a good friend of mine, Dan Boden, who is the MD of Abode Financial Planning. Hello, Dan.
Hi, Jackie. Good to speak to you.
And welcome to the podcast. And now we have lots of things to get to. We're going to talk about all your journey to become a certified financial planner and also some knock-on effects, some business-related aspects, hopefully along the way. And I know that you have got lots of tips and experience to share with our listeners today. So I am going to get cracking straight off the bat and ask you a little bit about how you got into the financial advice and financial planning profession in particular.
Okay, so unlike most, I didn't fall into financial planning actually. So I was working in a sales job in my kind of mid to late 20s, and I was just looking for something a bit more professional, something that you needed to be perhaps do some qualifications in, and somewhere, well, basically a more promising career. And a friend of a friend suggested financial advising, as it was then, and how I would go about getting into that. So I took it upon myself to do the CF exams. So I did, I think, CF 1 to 5, which got you the diploma.
Yep.
I did those in 5 months in my spare time, and then started applying for trainee roles at that point.
Wow.
The only challenge is I got the email through to say that I'd qualified and got my diploma through, and it was the 8th of August 2008. So when I started to try and apply for some roles, they were started to be quickly pulled left, right, and centre. So yeah, it was a bit of a challenge, and I had to wait another couple of years until I actually got into the profession and found a job, a trainee job at that stage.
Oh, wow. Well, that's not good for you at the time, but good that you kept persevering. And so what happened? You got your first trainee job, and then you kind of, got the bug for it and thought, this is the profession for you long term.
Yeah. So it was a trainee IFA role I started. It was May 2010. I worked at a company called Ensley Insurance. And they had an independent financial advising arm, and they were offering trainee roles. So it was basically you started out selling life and critical illness and income protection insurance on the telephones.
Yeah.
And what they then did is supported you through examinations, so you could start to give regulated advice. So after, a good year or something like that, I just continued with the journey there, progressed a little bit, and then managed to become a fully fledged independent financial advisor at the company. It was very much telephone based. It wasn't particularly holistic planning. It was more of a focus on sales, perhaps, but it was a really good grounding in the industry, in the advice giving process, and obviously to give advice, compliant advice.
Yeah.
So it was a really good place to cut your teeth.
Yeah.
So then thereafter, I went to a firm in Worcestershire, an IFA firm in Worcestershire, called English Mutual, and started to work there. So yeah, that was my first foray into proper financial planning with a company full of established advisors.
Yeah, and those guys, I guess, both of those first early days employers were good reputations for lots of training and support for their staff. And, it sounds like you felt that support and you got lots of support from both organisations.
Yes, yeah. So much more so Ensley, because I'd already done I was already diploma qualified, which was quite, I guess, a bit unusual for them. So they typically would take somebody on with no exams and then put them through them all. But I was already, a little bit ahead of that. So the next exams that I would have done were the AFs at the time. So
yeah.
They supported you from financial wise, and they did have training programs, which was great. And obviously we were learning everything about the industry at that stage. And English Mutual, it was very different actually. So it was it was a self-employed role. Mm-hmm. So it was learning more about the advice process, but having to learn about it fast because there was, no salary. You only got paid about the fees that you brought in. So, it was a case of trying to build your client bank from scratch, really, which was pretty steep learning curve.
Yes, I can imagine, especially with no basic salary. Then you're in at the deep end from day one, aren't you? Essentially, learning and advising, as you go.
Yeah. Those were hard yards, but
yes.
Learned a lot, met a lot of great people. Still in touch with today, and it's served well for the rest of my career, I think, as well.
And so, fast forward a few years, what attracted you and how did you come across the CFP? So you got all of your, your advanced CII exams, didn't you? And, at what point did the CFP kind of come up on your horizon?
I did every exam that we could in the CII, the PFS. I became a fellow, and I think fair to say a bit disgruntled with it, really. A bit frustrated with the kind of credits-based system. I mean, the grounding that it gives you, the technical grounding that it gives you is excellent. But, there also, it felt, was a bit of an element of, just building up enough credits so you could become chartered, so you could become a fellow. And, sometimes that meant doing exams that weren't particularly relevant to your field, perhaps, or something slightly different just to get the credit so you could get the extra qualifications.
Yes.
So I was aware of the CFP, spoke to one or two other advisors that I knew who had this. And this was, all automatically different language they were using. It was more about financial planning as well. And of course, that's the way the industry's gone in the last 10 years. So it felt like a good investment in my career. And this, it's as you told me when we first spoke, this is the gold standard and it's a master's equivalent. So it was, like I said, an investment and just a good way to future-proof myself, I think, and my career for moving forward.
Yeah. And that's, it's quite often the case with lots of people that kind of say, well, I've done my advanced exams with the CII, and actually I feel like I'm being used as a bit of a cash cow in order to get fellowship status. I have to keep taking these exams that, are not really that relevant. And also they're very, you kind of know it or you don't know it exams. They're not really testing too much in the way of holistic financial planning, are they? Because they're honing in on very specific areas. So you get that depth of knowledge, don't you? But in each exam, you don't get a huge breadth of knowledge, I guess. So I guess that's where, the CFP is a little bit different to that, isn't it?
Yeah, and I'm positive I wouldn't have passed the CFP had I not had a solid technical grounding with, a lot of experience as well. So, the CIA exam's wonderful, like you said, they're very good to build up your technical knowledge. So I definitely think there's still a place for them. It's just, I think this gives you more of a makes you a bit more of a rounded advisor with the financial planning piece as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it then. So I guess if you were a fellow then, am I right in thinking that you didn't sit the level 6 exam? Did you do the bridge assessment instead?
I did the bridge assessment. Yes, that was something. Yeah, it's kind of a bit of a fast track to enable me to sit the level 7 case study.
Yes. And so for those of you who are kind of listening and thinking, what on earth are they talking about? I'll just explain briefly. Basically, is if you are a chartered financial planner already with the CII, then the CISI gives you a kind of partial exemption against the level 6 exam, which is the first step of the two pieces in order to become a CFP professional. So instead of sitting the level 6 exam, which only run twice a year, you do an online professional assessment in the principles and practice of financial planning. And it's an online, it takes about 13 hours or so, 2 separate tests, I think. And you get 2 bites of the cherry to pass that for your submission fee. And then once you have passed that, you are then eligible to go straight on to the level 7 case study at, the next quarterly window or whenever you choose after that. And so that's exactly what you did, wasn't it, Dan? Did you go straight on after passing your professional assessment?
I did, yes. But before I undertook those professional assessments, I spoke with a few people because that was always the end goal, to get the CFP. So I spoke with yourself, I spoke with some other advisors to really understand specifically what was involved with the case study and how long it might take, and just to really kick the tires on it, because if I was going to start it, I was going to be committed to it and wanted to really make sure I was putting myself in the position to pass it. So once I thought actually I would have the capacity to do this, then I started it.
And I'd be really interested to hear what the other advisors said to you. I mean, everybody's going to know what I would have said to you, but what did those other people say to you?
The message was that it's definitely a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
And that it's something that I wouldn't regret doing. And that is absolutely true. Yeah. Another point was that it's hard work. And that is something that I can confirm. It absolutely is hard work, but it is worthwhile. And as we said earlier, it does complement the other exams and the other technical knowledge that you have. So I do think it is a worthwhile thing to undertake for sure.
Excellent. So you got your level 7 case study, and tell us a little bit about how you approached it, how you set the time out, all of that, from that day one of that case study landing in your inbox.
Okay, so before it landed in my inbox, I already made the choice to go on a course, and I was fortunate to join your course, which I wouldn't have been able to do it, I don't think, without having that extra support. So that was really good for me. Otherwise, it was making sure I had a lot of thought and put a lot of planning into when I was going to do it. So if you're able to, and you're fortunate to be able to manage your own diary, the time that you're planning to take the exam, to start the case study, try and block out as much as your calendar as you can. So for me, what that meant was trying to give myself a month where I didn't have any client reviews. Yep. Obviously, you can't just press pause on all your client work, but as much as I could, try to clear the diary a little bit and commit a good amount of time to this. So it was getting well prepared from my calendar, and it was going on a course like yourselves, which was really valuable for me.
Great. That's good to hear. That's 50 quid IOU. So what were your highs and lows going through the assessment process of, building that financial plan? Were there any particularly tricky bits and you thought, oh my goodness me, that's where the support came in the most valuable? Or perhaps any bits where you thought, oh, I can't, what's Jackie talking about? She's making a fuss over nothing. I'm just going to get on with it.
The things that I found most difficult were initially just understanding exactly what they were looking for. Mm-hmm. How much detail do you need to go into here? And I started thinking, surely they won't be thinking that you need to go into that level of detail, but they absolutely do. So having yourself there to guide me through that and ask those questions about, okay, so what are the types of things that they're looking for here, and how much detail do I need to go into, and what other considerations might I need to think about with this area. So that was, just learning about what they're expecting from us. Otherwise, it is quite a mammoth body of work. So that was quite challenging too, to stay focused, to commit time to it, to keep going back to it, and stay disciplined. And obviously, you've got full-time jobs, you've got families, you've got lives, and so on.
Yes.
So yeah, that was the most challenging aspect of it. Those two things, I think.
And I think that's a really good point, actually, because I think a lot of people don't realise when they start on this process that there is quite a lot of thinking time, of critical thinking skills needed, isn't there? So you kind of, you think, okay, look, this, lots of people say to me, the case study looks pretty straightforward, Jackie, and what's you making such a fuss about? But actually, when you get into the detail and you start to understand the level of detail that the assessors are looking for in that financial plan that you're going to create within that 10-week window, that actually you kind of have to pause, don't you, and go away and think about things and then come back, rather than just holding the whole thing in your head. You kind of start to blow a gasket after a while if you do that, don't you?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's something that I think the case study evolves as you do it as well.
Yeah.
And you think you're going down one route, but actually you end up somewhere slightly different. And yeah, I think, not sure if we'll come to it, but I failed quite comfortably my first submission. Yeah. And what I submitted the second time, which I passed, was a lot different to the first one. And, if I'm honest with myself, I think there was trying to fudge it over the last hurdle with the first one a little bit.
Yeah.
But then the second one was a lot more coherent. It flowed a lot better, and it just made a lot more sense. And I think it was in a place where you could quite comfortably present that to a client.
Yes.
Whereas the first one, it was being prepared to submit to an exam.
Yes. And do you think, looking back now, that, as you went through that process, it's changed you as a financial planner?
It's certainly changed how I deliver advice, I think. So it really reinforced the importance of goal setting for me. And at Abode, what we do now is we actually separate out a financial plan from the suitability report. So we would only give a suitability report should a client wish for us to proceed with our recommendations, which are made in the financial plan.
Yes.
And that's been really well received from clients as well. So yeah, that's something those are the main things that it has changed. So having the grounding, having done the case study, that certainly fed into our financial plan, the deliverable that clients get now at Abode.
Yes. And do you talk to clients at Abode about assumptions? My favourite subject, as you know.
Yes. So in the financial plan that we give, we would provide the assumptions and what we've used them for, and just a bit of rationale around those. To be fair, we don't get a lot of pushback or comments on that. But as long as they all make sense and we're explaining why they're used, it passes the test for clients. So that's, it's all, making sense for them. Yeah.
And did you use assumptions before you did the CFP?
Yes, we used assumptions, but only in Voyant. So I'm a Voyant user. We use that with every client. So having those, from a kind of due diligence compliance process position, we would record and explain why we would use certain assumptions, but they're already pre-built in. So yes, we would use them, but here with the financial plan, we would document them and perhaps provide a bit more explanation for them if need be.
Yeah, why you're doing what you're doing, why you're picking what you're picking, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Excellent. Good. So looking back at the entire process then, How many hours do you think it took you from the day that your level 7 case study landed in your inbox to the day that you submitted your second assessment? How many hours of work do you think that took?
Do you know, I probably won't say the second assessment. Let's go with the first, because the second one might be quite daunting if I added all those up. But I put myself a month. I penciled out a month. I tried not to have any client reviews for a month and try to allocate a couple of working days a week. I appreciate not everyone might be as fortunate to be able to run their own diaries like that, but yeah, it was a month of work. So whatever hours, that entails. I mean, it'll vary for different people, but that's just what it was for me. And then another couple of weeks working in evenings and the odd day to do the second submission and to tie it up.
Yeah, yeah. And lots of people tell me that, I think the CISI says on their website it's about 200 hours. But lots of people tell me it ranges anywhere between about 150 hours and 250 hours. And somebody said to me a while back saying that if I included all of my thinking time and all of when I'm standing there waiting for the kettle to boil, making my cup of coffee in the morning and my wife's talking to me and I'm not listening to her, all of that time, then you probably are, in the range of 250 hours. But it's a major undertaking, whichever, in excess of 100 hours, definitely, but a major undertaking, both, for you personally, professionally, but also, as you alluded to earlier, the impact on your family as well. Because if you can't always do work on your assessment and the financial plan build in office hours, then like you say, particularly for your second assessment, it's evenings and weekends, which, you otherwise would be spending with your family, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. It would be at the upper end of that 200, 250 as well, for sure.
Yeah.
And it is a commitment. It is absolutely a commitment, but personally, I found it was a worthwhile one. So yeah, you just got to, if you're able to commit that level of time to it, then, go for it, I'd say.
Yeah. And so do you think that now looking back and going back to using Voyant, has it changed the way that you look at Voyant or maybe discuss Voyant or discuss things in client meetings?
I think it helps us see the limitations of something like Voyant, perhaps. And I think we are, nobody knows what's going to happen to the future. It's the closest thing to a crystal ball that we have in this industry, whether it's Voyant or Truth or whatever system you use. So I think it's just being very honest with clients about what it is and what it's not. It's not guaranteed. And as long as the assumptions that you use are sensible and you've discussed and agreed these with the clients, then, it can be a really useful tool. But what it isn't is, it's not a projection of what's going to happen. Obviously, it's what might happen. And obviously things change as life changes, of course. And then, it's something useful that we can come back to, of course.
Yes. As some people say to me from time to time, it gives me the right answer, Jackie. And I say, oh, no, it doesn't.
No, it's an answer. It's not, I wouldn't say it is the right one. It's a guide, nothing more, really. And that's certainly how we see it. And, certainly I think what I love about the Voyant, certainly my case, is how visual it is and clients engage with it a lot more and it's a lot more understandable. So it's better than just numbers on a screen. And so, for that sense, I think it's really valuable. So
you don't miss your Excel spreadsheets and our time together at all?
No, I do not. I do not. But, it wasn't unenjoyable. It was hard work, but, anything worthwhile, it always is, isn't it? So, I'd do it again, but I don't think I would change anything, to be honest with you. I'd do the course again. It's just necessary. You have to put the time, and there's no shortcuts. There's no way around that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are nearly out of time today. This conversation has gone super quick, Dan. I could talk to you all day, but let's wrap things up and let me ask you one final question for those people who are thinking about embarking on their journey to become a CFP professional. Do you have any tips or any advice that you would like to share with them?
Yeah, probably already mentioned it actually, but yeah, set time aside. That's really crucial, I think. So figure out if you've got something bigger on in the end, toward the end of the year, figure out what submission, when in the year the submission makes most sense for you personally. And if you're able to organize your calendar to give yourself a bit of extra time during the day, then go for that. I'd say do a course. Yours, I enjoyed having somebody who's been there, seen it and done it, and, give you a bit of tough love now and again is certainly valuable for me. And lastly, it's just do the work, put the hours in. There's no other way around it, really. Nobody's going to do it for you. So it's just do the hard work as well.
Yes, some great tips there, Dan. Thank you very much. And it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks very much for joining me.
You're welcome, Jackie. I'd love to speak to you.
It's really interesting, isn't it, to listen to different people who have different experiences of gaining their Certified Financial Planner certification, or maybe developing the financial planning profession at large. If you know anybody who you think might be interested in listening to any of these podcasts, then please do pass on our details. That's it for me. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. See you again soon. Bye for now.